Hey, Mr. Schroeder here to talk to you today. Little math enrichment about percents. Where do we see them? How do we use them? What does percent mean? That's going to be answered in today's lesson. And since we've been doing a lot of fractions in the last unit, it's a perfect time to talk about percent today. You may have seen this word percent, but most likely you've seen this sign too that says percent like that. I need you to do a little activity before I get started with my math lesson on the whiteboard. I want you to, in a second here, pause the video and list as many things that you can that use percent or percentages. And then when you're all done, I want you to unpause it, and I'll go through maybe just 4 or 5 of the ones that I think about most often when I hear the name percent or hear the word percent. So go ahead and pause the video and list as many as you can. If you've unpaused and you have a little bit of a list, maybe you have 1, 2, maybe even quite a few percent items, here's the places that I see them the most. I see them in sports all the time. I'm a basketball coach here at Monaga. I've had 3 games this week, and I think of my percent of free throws, and we're not doing too great. I hear it all the time, like your shooting percentages, you're maybe in a different sport like hockey, maybe the goalie saves a certain percent of the shots that are shot that are on goal shots. I see it all the time at stores when they have sales. This shirt's 30% off. Well, how much is it now, right? I hear it there all the time. I hear it when it comes, well, here's one that you're maybe sitting right in front of you. If you're on your iPad right now, I think of battery. When I'm fishing and my Vexilar is about to die and it's down to 2% battery, I better go charge it up so I can get it back to 100% before the next fishing trip so I have a Vexilar to use, right? I also see it, and maybe, this is one you probably see a bunch too. Things like tests or homework, grading. Oh, I got 80%, that's a B minus. I got a 93, that's an A minus, so on and so forth. We use percentages for a lot of things. If you're wondering what percent means, you're probably thinking, well, it has to be some sort of measurement of some sort because we're seeing how often goalies save. We're seeing how much we get off of a shirt or anything for that matter. We're seeing how much battery we have left. We're seeing how much we got right or how much we got wrong on a test. That all has to do with percentages. If I think about that and I need to give a real good definition for percent, I'm going to call it out of 100. That is so key to know. Percent means out of 100. Well, you might be thinking to yourself, well, we don't do everything 100 times, Mr. Schroeder. And what does a shirt have to do with out of 100 if the shirt only costs $15? Well, you're going to use what you know about equivalent fractions that I've talked about in previous videos, and I'm sure your homeroom teacher has talked to you about it as well, to understand how we use percents. For example, if Mr. Schroeder was shooting a basketball at the free throw line, it's a free shot, I shoot 5, or let's go with 10 times. I shoot 10 times, and I make, well, I'll start with the easiest kind of percentage. I make 5 of them. You notice that that's half. But it's not 5%. It's out of 100. I need to figure out what I made out of 100. I didn't shoot 100 times, but if I did, if my 10 was 100, are you starting to think of what I'm doing? Whatever you do to the bottom, you do to the top. Equivalent fractions. We've talked about this so many times. But if I did shoot 100 times, how does a 10 become 100? Multiplying by 10 groups of 10 make 100. 5 groups, whatever I do to the bottom, I do to the top to find equivalent or equal fractions. These have to be equal. 5 times 10, if I did on the bottom to the top, is 50. 50 out of 100. If I kept shooting and every 10 I made 5, I would eventually make 50 out of 100. Hey, that sounds a lot like 50 out of 100. Isn't that what percent means, out of 100? So it's 50%. Okay, and that's a very basic problem. That's one of the easier ones. 50% is always easy to find because it's half. But I want you to really see that if I go like this and I get rid of the 50 here, and I get rid of this 50 here, this sign, fraction bar, and the denominator of 100 means something out of 100. This percent sign means the same thing. Something out of 100. this sign here and this sign here mean the same thing. So if you can find an equivalent fraction that has a denominator of 100, you can find the percentage. I'll give you another example. Maybe I won't make it so easy. If Mr. Shorter made 7 out of 10, it's not quite half. I know 50% is half. Okay, that's a common one. I made more than half, so my answer should definitely be more than 50%. All I have to do to my work then is, if I shot 10 hockey pucks at a goalie and he saved 7 of them, what's his save percentage? How well did he save pucks? Let's see. He saved, if the 10 was 100, timesing by 10 again, well, the numerator would also be times by 10. He would save, if I shot 100 pucks at the same rate of 7 out of 10 each time, eventually I would end up shooting 70 out of 100, which is equal to 70%. He would have saved 70% of the shots that were shot at him if he kept going that way all the way to 100. Okay? It's not always 10, too. We don't always do things in 10s. Sometimes we do things in 5s or 15s or 3s or whatever it might be. If, let's just say I did something out of 5, okay? On a math test, I'm referring to some of the things we talked about earlier. On a math test, there was only 5 questions and I got 3 of them correct. What percent did I get on this? How do I find out my grade? Well, it has to become, don't multiply by 10 now because I need to make this 100. I needed to make it out of 100. That's what that says. Out of 100%. 5, how does it become 100? 5 groups of 20. I think of $20 bills. 5 $20 bills makes $100. Whatever I do to the bottom, I do to the top. 3 times 20 is 60, excuse me. Once I get to that, I know I can just take my 60 out of 100 and write 60%, because that's the same, 60 out of 100, 60 out of 100. And it makes sense to me too, because I made more than half. On my test I got more than half right, so shouldn't my percentage be more than 50%? And that's using a little estimation to find out your percentages too. The same thing would apply if I had let's try to do something else, like a test out of 20, and I got 17 correct. I still need to find it out of 100. How many times are you going to hear me say that today, right? 20. How does 20 become 100? 20, 40, 60, 80, 100. So that's 5 groups of 20. It's kind of like the reverse fact of the last one. Whatever I do the bottom, I do the top. 20 became 100. And if you had to work this one slow, 17 times 5, let's do it how we normally would. 17 times 5. 5 times 7 makes 35. And then 5 times 10 is 50. If I add that together, I get 85%. Or 85 out of 100. That's just a fraction. And a lot of kids do this mistake sometimes as well. Don't make this mistake. A lot of kids get to this part and they go 8500%. That kind of makes sense, but it's not the correct answer. That says 85 out of 100 out of 100. That doesn't make too much sense. That would be like, this might be a little bit too much. If you understand this, it's awesome. If this kind of is hard for you to understand, that's okay. We'll keep working on decimals as we go. That would be like 0.85%. Not even a full percent. 85 hundredths of 1%. That means I got like an F minus 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 on the test. I didn't even get 1% of them right, which is not what happened. I got 17 out of 20, which means I got 85% correct. That's way more than half, way more than 50%. Oh, I was close to getting them all right, closer to 100% than I was 50%. Okay, my last thing I'm going to say, I'm going to try to keep this video as short as I can, but the last thing I'm going to say is sometimes it doesn't always work easily. For example, 1 out of 3. If I ate 1 out of 3 of my apples, how many of my apples did I eat? I need to turn it into out of 100, just like we've been doing the whole time. Well, how does 3 become 100? 3 times 33 is really close. 3 times 33, 66, 99, but that's just one off. There's ones that don't fit equally into 100. You might know after you're in high school that it's 33.3 repeating. Well, times 3 gives you 100. But as a fourth grader, there's some like, what if this was a 7? 7 times what gives me 100? I don't know off the top of my head. That's too hard. I'm not going to challenge you with that, but you could think on a calculator I would take 100 and now just divide by 7 to figure out what I multiply by 7 to get back to 100. Okay, so it doesn't always work so crisp as things like a denominator of 5, or if you do things 10 times, a denominator of 10, or denominator 20. Even easier, a denominator of 50. If I made 25 out of 50 shots, well, 50 becomes 100 really easy. Multiply by 2. 2 times 25 is 50. That's still 50%. Things that work easy, things that don't. For now, we're just going to stick to the easier ones. Here's a couple you can try in a notebook. I am doing a quiz next week on percent, so it's important that you watch this because next week it's really going to matter for you. If I go ahead and try these on a whiteboard or notebook at home, I'll give you 3, maybe 2. Go ahead and try, okay? Number 1, if you had 1 out of 10. Number 2, if you had 4 out of 5. And what if you had 13 out of 50? These all the denominators fit into 100 pretty easily. So go ahead and give those a try. You can go ahead and pause the video now, give them a go, and then I'm going to actually do them so you can unpause the video for your answer as soon as you're done. So go ahead and pause now. Okay, if you're done with your problems, here's how it worked. 10 becomes 100. I need to make every single one of these bad boys out of 100. That's what percent's all about. Okay. So let's figure that out. 10 becomes 100 by multiplying by 10. 1 times 10 is 10. That's 10%. 5 times 20 is 100. 4 times 20 is 80. If I did something 4 out of 5 times, well, then I did it 80% of the time because that's what it would have been if it had been 100. 50 becomes 100 by multiplying by 2. 13 times 2 is 26. It's 26%. The most important part for me today is that you understand that percentages can be applied to everything. Things that are done 100 times, things that aren't done 100 times. You still can find it out of 100. If you do it 200 times, you would divide by 2 to figure out what percentage you got. So we use percentage a lot for tipping, percent interest when you're older, percent on grading, sports, batteries in the stores to figure out how much percentage off we get. This is a life skill that you're going to need to know. And we're going to continue to work on it throughout the year. So have a good rest of your day, guys. We'll talk to you later.